Okay, before we start, I want to make something clear. This video is not about accusations, drama, or personal attacks, right? It's about a critical discussion and transparency, because I've been watching XclusiveAce for over a decade, probably going back to his Black Ops 2 videos, and I have a lot of respect for the content he's provided to the Call of Duty community. And he's been a trusted figure for many players, myself included, so I'm not here to disrespect him or anyone else, and this is simply about asking questions and having an open, respectful conversation. Now, I recently reached out to Ace regarding statements he made during a debate years ago, shortly after Modern Warfare 2019 launched, and this discussion delved into skill-based matchmaking and something even more concerning, engagement-optimized matchmaking. And the problem here is, Ace claimed I must be confusing him with someone else, denying ever saying these things, but there's archive content proving otherwise, and it's strange and raises more questions than answers, which is why I'm making this video. And the featured content you'll see here comes from Branch of Bush, and if you haven't already checked out his channel, you should, and I'm telling you, take a day off or a weekend and binge his videos, because you might just find yourself questioning everything about Call of Duty afterwards. And the guy's been exposing issues that many creators avoid discussing for years, and his work definitely deserves more attention. So the video was originally uploaded by Hutch on September 19th, 2021, and it is called I Debate Skill-Based Matchmaking with XclusiveAce. Actually, skill-based matchmaking is good. And the link to the video is in the description below. And for all those wondering, I'm not a rant channel. I would say I'm just a data-driven researcher, someone who enjoys deep dives a lot and figuring things out. And one thing is clear, Call of Duty has been rigged at its core for engagement and not fair competition. And this isn't new information. It's been debated since 2019 when Activision's infamous matchmaking patents were filed. So yeah, let's just see what's really going on here, and let's explore this together with respect, facts, and critical eye. And this isn't, again, about starting fights, it's about finding answers and understanding the full picture.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, when did you get into content creation? How did you get into content creation? What made you want to get started?
So I got into it, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago, roughly. And at the time, it was basically for like tip guys. It was basically just like T Martin, Drifter, maybe a few others. And I just felt like there was room for more.
The main reason why I wanted to ask you to come on is because you seem to be one of the more knowledgeable people in this community in terms of like how the game functions on the back end. Obviously, we're talking about Call of Duty today.
Yeah, so I'm not on this super extreme end. I think we're actually going to agree on a lot of things when it comes to skill-based matchmaking.
Okay, so A says, I'm not on the extreme and we will agree on most stuff. Fair enough, but the reality is there's a large portion of the community who absolutely disagrees with skill-based and engagement-optimized matchmaking, and this isn't a simple middle ground issue, so to say. It's something that deeply frustrates a lot of players who feel it impacts their experience negatively.
But I think Call of Duty is a very different game compared to other games. I think skill-based matchmaking, since Modern Warfare 2019, that's where things, like, immediately there was like a switch that they flipped.
Alright, so Ace says Call of Duty is different than other games, especially Modern Warfare 2019, since it feels like a switch that flipped. So what's this switch? Are we talking about the patent filed in early 2019? I mean, that's the one that's often believed to be skill-based matchmaking, but isn't exactly the same thing. In the patent titled Methods and Systems for Improved Content Generation in Multiplayer Gaming Environments, the focus is on adjusting the game's parameters based on the skill levels of individual players. And all these patents obviously cite each other. So the first one is the modification of the gaming parameters is based on the skill level of each player. In embodiments, the modification of gaming parameters is executed in real time during a game session. In embodiments, the modification of the gaming parameters are executed on a player-by-player basis, based on their skill levels, which may be different for different players. Therefore, the online multiplayer gaming environment generates a gaming environment within which 2 or more players can play cooperatively as a team within the same gaming environment of the same level of the same game and tailors the experiences in that gaming environment to the specific skill level of each player. Interesting. And we got content customization based on player skill level. In a first implementation of the present specification, the system enables players of different skill levels to play together in the same level of a gaming session by providing players of different skill levels challenges tailored to their particular skill level. In embodiments, a multiplayer game environment is simulated by a computing system. The gaming parameters are adjusted within the gaming environment according to skill levels of the different players participating in the game. Adjustments result in each player in a team experiencing a different degree of difficulty or challenge while still experiencing the same content within the same level of the gameplay session and while still be able to cooperatively play as a team. In embodiments, the skill levels of the players are different for at least 2 or more players. Well, so yeah, this is not just about matching players by skill, but about modifying the gameplay in real time during a session. So when we talk about the switch, do we really understand the full scope here? Because there's more to it than just matchmaking, and the patent suggests that the game or an outside application could be influencing your experience on a much deeper level.
Yeah, there's a lot of other detail I'm sure we can get into as we go through the conversation, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm not completely against it.
Yes, there's a lot of detail they can get into in the debate, and I couldn't agree more, especially as the conversation develops later on. But let's focus for a moment on Hutch's point about Advanced Warfare, because he claimed that the game started to feel different, and that's a crucial observation. And Hutch seems to be suggesting that something fundamentally shifted in the way that Call of Duty played around that time. And Ace agrees, and that's where it gets interesting. So let's see where it goes, because it feels like there's something deeper about the game's evolution.
I agree. Something did feel different in that game compared to the others as well, but I still don't think that was the same type of system. I don't think that was so much engagement optimized matchmaking as more of a true skill-based matchmaking, but turned up from the previous games and the games that followed it.
Okay, so Ace agrees with Hutch that Advanced Warfare felt different, but he adds an interesting twist. He doesn't think it was the same type of system, and he believes it was more of a true skill-based matchmaking that was just turned up from previous games. Now, what's interesting here is how Ace shifts the conversation from skill-based to engagement-optimized matchmaking, even though the debate seems to be centered around skill-based matchmaking. And yeah, people have been calling it skill-based matchmaking for years, but now we're talking about engagement-optimized matchmaking, and it's not just a minor difference, it's like a shift in how we define the problem. You know, there are public concerns about skill-based matchmaking, but a more neutral term, so to say, like engagement-optimized matchmaking, can be more easily explained away or justified. And people who went down the rabbit hole since 2019, like Branch of Bush or Sirius, if you know Sirius, you're an OG, they have gone further, you know, calling it profile-based matchmaking. Let that sink in. They're not even calling it skill-based or engagement-optimized matchmaking anymore. They're shifting the focus to the profiles, implying it's not just about skill, but about who you are and how you're matched with specific players. So this distinction adds another layer of complexity to the issue, making it a lot harder for the community to rally around a single term and simplifying the industry's defense against any backlash. And if you ask me, it's clever, isn't it? Because it's like pitting the community to fight amongst each other and not look at the publisher. Okay, so Hutch asks Ace to explain the differences between team balancing, engagement optimized, and skill-based matchmaking. And since there might be some misunderstanding, right? Now, this is where the things get really interesting, because it is like opening the door to a deeper discussion about what could be going on behind the scenes. But the big question is, why bring up engagement optimized matchmaking when this debate was supposed to be about skill-based matchmaking? This is what I was asking, and I mean, it's a valid point that makes you wonder why we're heading down this road, especially when most players are still laser focused on skill-based matchmaking, right? Even years later, you know, even now. And remember, this video was uploaded in September 2021, 2 years after Modern Warfare 2019, and many of their patents were filed that kind of flipped the switch.
Yeah, okay. Team balancing is not matchmaking, because matchmaking is what happens when you get players into the lobby. Team balancing is what happens once the players are already there.
Okay, so Ace claims that team balancing is not the same as matchmaking. Matchmaking happens when players are brought into the lobby, while team balancing occurs once players are already there. Well, that's not quite true. It is soft reservations, and that ensure that things are balanced even before players step into that lobby, right? And these reservations essentially pre-select groups of players based on their profiles long before any visible matchmaking takes place. And it's matchmaking dressed up differently, so to say, just happening behind the scenes to create those supposedly balanced lobbies. So while it might technically be a separate step from team balancing, it's hardly disconnected from matchmaking as a whole. So let's look at this from the patents. Clan formation and management of non-player characters, NPCs. The matchmaking systems and methods herein may be used in context in addition to or other than for matching players for a given gameplay session. For example, matchmaking described herein may be applied to clan formation, management of non-player characters, NPCs, and or other applications. The matchmaking described herein may be used to suggest clans or teams. For example, one or more players may wish to form or join a clan for a given game, but not know what would be an appropriate mix of player styles, player roles, skill levels, and or other player characteristics that would make an optimal clan given the player's own characteristics. The system may identify optimal clan composition based on matchmaking related information such as, without limitation, a game profile, a player profile, for example explicit preferences, purchases made, player styles, player geography, player historical play schedules, etc., prior match scores, prior quality scores, and or other information. Optimal clans may be those that have performed successfully, for example accomplished the most wins, objectives, etc., are associated with the highest player enjoyment, for example based on quality scores, play together most frequently, and or are otherwise deemed to be desirable. The matchmaking described herein may be used to manage NPCs. For example, the system may be used to select, generate an NPC to fill a gap in a clan or team. For example, a sniper-style NPC, generate a team or clan of NPCs, analyze NPCs post-game to identify successful NPCs, and or perform other actions with respect to NPCs. Okay, so this described how a matchmaking system traditionally used to pair players for multiplayer gaming, but can be extended to two additional areas: clan and team formation and management of NPCs. And this text highlights how matchmaking systems can be applied beyond standard player matchmaking. And these systems can facilitate forming balanced, enjoyable and successful clans or teams and manage NPCs in a way that complements the overall gaming experience. By leveraging player and performance data, developers can create dynamic, optimized gameplay scenarios for both real players and AI-controlled characters. So NPCs are bots.
And that's always existed in COD, particularly in Treyarch games. It tends to be stronger.
And here I'm just curious, but how do you know that it tends to be stronger in Treyarch games?
And a common experience is if you're a very high skill player, like significantly better than most people you'd ever run into, in order to balance the team out, in order to balance that artificial like hidden elo score in the background, they typically stack your team with the worst players in the lobby. And even then your skill level of your team is likely going to be higher than the skill level of the other team, because it's not possible to make up for that skill difference.
All right, so it's not possible to make up for that skill difference. How is that? I mean, there are patterns out there that suggest otherwise, obviously, and some even describe how lower skilled players are giving a higher tolerance for accuracy to help them hit targets, essentially tweaking gameplay mechanics in their favor. And it says, once an assessment is made, the computer program that executes the gaming environment modifies elements of the session and or gameplay parameters as the session is being created based on the aggregate skill level. In embodiments, session modifications may include, but are not limited, to adjusting the number of enemies, adjusting the complexity of puzzles, and player adjustments, which may include the player's health, damage, speed, available abilities, and difficulty level. In one embodiment, a player's health is scaled based on the player's skill level by data corresponding to acquired skill level of each player is generated and presented to a player via a game console, resulting in each player within a team experiencing a different degree of difficulty or challenge while still experiencing the same content in the same gameplay session. Okay. Figure 3b illustrates a table providing an exemplary list of parameters of gameplay session that are modified based on a player's skill level and the corresponding experience for a player of different skill levels. For example, in a first shooter gaming environment, when a first player aims his weapon at a target, a parameter defining the tolerance for how accurate the player's aim must be to hit the target is modified based on the acquired skill level of the player. The computer assigns the tolerance for how accurate the player's aim must be to hit the target differently based on the skill level of the first player. A player having a higher skill level will be assigned a lower tolerance parameter and therefore will have to be more accurate in aiming in order to hit the target. A player having a lower skill level will be assigned a higher tolerance parameter and therefore could be less accurate in aiming in order to hit the target. Very interesting stuff. And this aligns perfectly with the experiences shared by me and plenty of other high skill players, always stuck with carrying the bots, you know, the ones who ignore the objective and still manage to go negative. And for players who genuinely excel, it becomes unplayable. You know, the game dynamics start to feel rigged against you, turning every match into an uphill battle while you're forced to compensate for teammates who seem more like spectators than actual players.
Yeah, talking as a solo player for that one.
Okay.
But then skill-based matchmaking is what I actually am totally fine with to some degree, where it has your hidden elo score in the background. You can't see it at all.
So it's fine to some degree for skill-based matchmaking to have a hidden elo score running in the background, but hidden elo score, like, why hide it? You know, transparency would go a long way here. And if there's an elo system shaping the experience, why not just show the players what they're up against? You know what I mean? In many games, you can just look it up. And if we speak about ranked modes, why keep that elo number hidden too, right? If the point is a competitive fairness and skill assessment, shouldn't players have visibility into their own standing? I mean, this is, like I said, in many games, and it raises questions about what's being concealed and why. And if it's all about balance, I think transparency would benefit everyone involved. Okay, so now let me add something to the topic, because I made a comment one day under Ace's video and asked this, relating the hidden data. And I asked, where's the data on ratings tied to how much cash you've poured into the game? That's the kind of insight no one talks about because it's tucked away in the shadows. That correlates with the lobbies you get too. And I got asked if there's solid source for this, you know, not just a patent. And fair question. Do you have a solid source for this? Not a patent that may or may not be in use, but actual evidence of it being implemented in the game. I've seen anecdotes from both sides of this saying they either did or didn't see easier lobbies after buying something, but no solid proof yet, and I'm genuinely curious to know if I've missed out on someone doing a proper study of this. And I replied, when you ask for proof, maybe you should take a look at your own words from that debate years ago. There have been a lot of patents filed. Those words speaks volumes, don't they? It's almost like you knew more than you let on, just saying. Maybe it's time to stop playing the victim and actually call it out for what it is. You said the words yourself. Casino-based matchmaking and hidden server-side algorithms. Funny how that debate video is suddenly privated. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? So yeah, I don't know if these patents are unreliable when I reference them, but valid enough when being brought up in the debate, but we will cover that soon enough. And he replied saying, I think you have me confused with someone else, cause I haven't hosted any debates on this channel or privated any videos. You're making a claim, so the burden of proof for that claim lies with you, and I was really curious to see if someone had finally proven this one was active, because I wouldn't be surprised to hear that it is active. I'm a little disappointed that you didn't have a source for this. And I just want to ask, who exactly am I confusing you with? You know, this is stuff you said back in September 2021, and you were talking about patents and all that strange behind-the-scenes matchmaking stuff. But like I said, we will get into that soon.
But it gives you an indication of how good of a player you are, essentially. It's not just your kill death ratio. It's a common misconception. Not just score per minute. It's a bunch of values that go into this.
So what values are we talking about? Let us look into the patent again that was filed in 2019, and we're talking about generating game and player profiles. Analytics and feedback engine may generate a game profile for a gameplay session based on gameplay information which may be monitored and or otherwise obtained by analytics and feedback engine. Gameplay information may describe various game characteristics of a gameplay session that may influence the quality of gameplay. For example, gameplay information may include, without limitation, a number of players, type of roles, for example snipers, types of in-game items used or purchased, for example weapons, vehicles, armor, custom suits, custom paint, tires, engine modifications, etc. Composition of teams or clans, for example number and or types of roles in each clan, maps or game levels played, for example battle zones, racetracks, sporting arenas, etc. Duration of gameplay, for example how duration of a gameplay session, player skill levels, player styles, for example aggressive, prefers to be a sniper, etc. and or other information related to a gameplay session. A game profile may be specific for a given gameplay session. For example, different game profiles may be associated with different gameplay sessions and or may be used to generate a broader game profile for a particular game. For example, different games may be associated with different game profiles. In this manner, a given game or gameplay session may be characterized using a game profile. Analytics and feedback engine may likewise generate a player profile for a player based on player information. The player information may be monitored and or otherwise obtained by analytics and feedback engine. The player information may describe various characteristics of a player, which may be used to assess whether the player will enjoy a given gameplay session, a match, and or a game. For example, player information may include, without limitation, a style of gameplay, for example aggressive, a role preference, for example an explicit indication by the player of such preference, a role actually played, a duration of gameplay sessions, a number of gameplay sessions played in a given login session, in-game items used or purchased by the player, membership in a clan or team, preference to play with clanmates or friends, demographic information of the player, for example geographic location, gender, income level, etc., win-loss records, scores, and or other information that may be used to determine whether a player will enjoy a given gameplay session, a match, and or a game. And we have of course other values that are important which tie to the soft reservation system we mentioned earlier. Examples of quality factors include, without limitation, a player quitting a match or gameplay session while other players are still playing, indicating dissatisfaction. A duration of game session, for example a longer duration, may indicate greater satisfaction. A gameplay performance factor, for example a kill to death ratio in a shooter game, a lap time in a racing game, etc., where greater performance may indicate greater satisfaction. A player engagement factor, for example a speed of a player input, a level of focus as determined from camera peripherals, etc., where greater engagement may indicate greater satisfaction. A competition level of a game, for example whether lopsided or not, where evenly matched games may indicate greater satisfaction. A biometric factor, for example facial expressions, pulse, body language, sweat, etc., explicit feedback from a player, from example responses to a survey and or other observable metrics related to gameplay. In some implementations of the invention, analytics and feedback engine may determine a quality score based on one or more business factors that describe a business value derived from a given gameplay session. For example, and without limitation, a business factor may include a business concern such as an amount of revenue derived from a given gameplay session. For example, number or amount of in-game purchases, number of impressions of an advertisement, or other ad-based revenue stream, etc. A level of customer engagement and or other information that can be used to assess a level of value derived from a given gameplay session. It should be noted that analytics and feedback engine may generate a quality score based on a combination of one or more quality factors, and one or more business or customer engagement factors may be used as well. And yeah, guess what? The microtransaction patent is cited right here in the beginning of the EOMM patent filed in 2019. And slowly it all starts to make sense, right?
No, we don't know the exact factors that go into it.
Oh, we do know what factors go into shaping our game experience. I mean, you can pause again and read for yourself, but I'll explain it. These engines don't just look at one thing, they consider a mix of variables like how long we play, how competitive the matches are, how balanced the teams feel, even how fast we're clicking or reacting, and they're tracking everything. Whether we quit a game early, dominate the leaderboard, or spend money on in-game items or targeted advertising, which skins for which players to show. And it's all about creating engagement, right? Optimizing how games respond to us as players, and the performance metrics, engagement signals, and even our buying behavior all get processed by these engines to fine-tune our experience. And the goal is simple, to keep us coming back by making the gameplay feel just right, whether it's intense competition, rigging to keep you in the churn state, or a fun casual session. So they're shaping the game around us in real time.
But through all the testing that we've done,
and here I ask myself, what testing? Who is we? And apparently it was XclusiveAce, JGod, and Drifter from when they did the testing in Cold War for Ping.
It was primarily, I'm talking more recent Call of Duty games. This is getting more into the engagement optimized, but it was more so recent performance. That's what you're matchmaked on, but like more than any like career stats or anything like that. It looks at your recent performance, and that's where we're starting to see fairly strong correlations when it comes to the matchmaking. But yeah, we don't know every single stat that goes into it. There have been a lot of patents filed.
Okay, so let's go back to the comment section. I quoted Ace saying, there have been a lot of patents filed. And if I'm not mistaken, it sounds like the patents were central to understanding matchmaking system in this debate. So what's all this about?
That discuss various elements that could potentially go into it. And that's why we're guessing that there are many other factors that go into it. It could be how much you move in a match. It could be, I don't know, your accuracy. Like there's a bunch of stats that could play into that, but I don't know for sure. It's obviously not public data.
Yeah, but now we have some of that hidden data that's finally becoming public, right? You mentioned in the past, Ace, how much you move and your accuracy are key factors. And guess what? People are noticing it too. We're talking about operator choices, skins, movement patterns. Everything seems to be tracked now, and you may ask yourself, why? What's the real purpose behind all of this? And you can tie that back to the figure 3B from the patent Methods and Systems for Improved Player Matching in Multiplayer Gaming Environments. Because it lays out how accuracy, movement, and other elements can influence matchmaking and the player's experience. And no surprise, many players are talking about their spawns being manipulated, spawning into a sandwich, getting killed, only to respawn right in front of their killer again. And that's a classic example of rigging your experience, making it feel like you're trapped in a cycle. And think about it, the degree of accuracy, the likelihood of being targeted by enemies, the number of challenging players in an encounter, all of this is separated by skill levels with different thresholds for high, medium, and low skill players. And the worst part is, it seems like highly skilled players are at disadvantage, while low skilled players are getting help to balance the odds. So what's really going on here? We've just seen a little bit of that hidden data revealed to the public, but ask yourself, what about the stuff that's still hidden? The data that's not visible to us, the stuff that tracks far beyond what's shown to players, possibly influencing their experience in ways that go beyond just gameplay. And it's all about this hidden data that's public now, the kind that doesn't seem to relate to your purchases, but it sure impacts your experience. And let's not forget, data isn't just numbers. It's the foundation of how the game can control and tweak the game experience behind the scenes.
Yeah, at least to some extent, that is more engagement optimized. And to me, it feels more like recently what they're using in Call of Duty is kind of like a slot machine algorithm where they're trying to control the highs and lows for you.
Kind of like a slot machine algorithm. All right, so back to the comment section. And yeah, it looks like I made a mistake in quoting. I'm very sorry for that, but I'm sure you get the point. So this sounds like a slot machine algorithm, right? It's like a bit EOMM when you think about how they control our highs and lows throughout the session. And it's not just about skill anymore. It's about keeping you engaged by keeping things unpredictable, almost random, I would say, like playing on a slot machine. That definitely sounds like the essence of engagement optimized matchmaking, if you ask me. So yeah.
In the experience. So if you have a series of bad games, they're going to give you a good game. They're going to put you into an easy lobby, so then you can feel really good about that, and then you're going to be chasing that high over and over again, and it's a cycle that they try to maintain.
Yeah.
But again, like, we don't have perfect data on that, and that's something that it's kind of hard to get perfect data on it.
Well, we don't even need all the data, to see it. This is how the game plays out for most people, and it's an emotional roller coaster with highs and lows carefully designed to keep you hooked. When you hit a streak, then suddenly it feels like the game throws you off just when you're getting comfortable, and it's a cycle, and they seem to be actively maintaining it. But the big question is, why? Like, why is the game rigging our experience like this? Is it really just about keeping players engaged, or is there more to it? Could it be that player experience we're seeing aligns perfectly with the patterns that have been discussed? I mean, if that's true, then it's not just a random set of gameplay mechanic. It's a deliberate design to keep us emotionally addicted while creating that addictive loop. It really makes you wonder how much of this is just the game and how much of it is engineered to keep us engaged.
Their algorithms are definitely all hidden server side, so we can't really access that stuff.
All right, okay, their algorithms are hidden server side. Who would have thought, right? It's like all the major elements that affect gameplay, like matchmaking and the emotional roller coaster we experience, are locked away in some black box, a vault, like the Krabby Patty secret formula, if you get what I'm saying. And they keep it all behind the scenes, far from the player's view. And I still don't know why the debate on Hutch's channel from 2021 is private now. Seems a bit odd, but I think it would have made more sense to keep it public if there's nothing to hide, because a little transparency would go a long way, in clearing things up.
No, not at all. I would like to talk about it a little bit later. I think there are a lot of other factors that are at play that are often not considered, because things changed so drastically with Modern Warfare 2019 outside of matchmaking as well. But
yeah, the question is, what really changed drastically outside of matchmaking? If we're talking about the game itself, not much seems to have shifted in terms of core gameplay mechanics. I mean, sure, the game engine may have evolved, but when it comes down to the actual experience players are having, it's mostly about how players are matched together. And that's the big difference. The gameplay itself, how you move, shoot, or interact with the environment, hasn't fundamentally changed, but the way the game matches players based on skill, preferences, and engagement, that's what's been altered. And this shift in matchmaking systems and how players are grouped or pitted against each other is the real change that impacts the experience, even though the core gameplay remains largely the same. And it's like they've adjusted how the game feels for players by tweaking who you're playing with instead of overhauling the entire gameplay loop.
yeah, so player retention, I'm sure, is like their stats on the back end. They've got tons of data that they're working with, and but the problem I have is, like I said, a bunch of other things changed at the exact same time that they significantly changed matchmaking, and therefore we don't know to what extent each factor is contributing to that. I'm sure the matchmaking does contribute to it to some extent, but I don't know how much of an extent that is. So one thing I've got written down here is the seasonal leveling system that they brought in. This prevents the really heavy grinders from basically beating the game and unlocking everything early on and then being bored for the rest of the year and not playing it.
So yeah, what has really changed? I mean, the game experience is being monitored and adjusted in real time, right? So when we're talking about boredom or a lack of engagement, it's possibly the automated system deciding when to push you to unlock more items, give you a tougher challenge, or even throttle your progress to keep you invested. And it's all about manipulating your emotions and keeping you hooked. And back in the day with games like Modern Warfare 2, 2009, the experience felt authentic. You put in the time and it rewarded you. You didn't have to worry about invisible algorithms or any game storefront controlling your gameplay experience, and you could enjoy the journey of unlocking everything. Me logging in over 10,000 of hours in a game over half a decade back then, I mean, that's a mark of a game that had real staying power and felt rewarding. And the big difference now is that it's all about keeping players in the cycle. Games now seem to be optimized for a constant stream of engagement and monetization, rather than just creating an experience that's inherently fun and rewarding, like the old school days, if you know what I mean.
On average, I think when you look at like the majority of the player base and stuff, absolutely, I'm sure that has helped. And yeah, I don't deny that at all. I don't think that is necessarily great for the long-term health of the franchise. That has yet to be seen, I guess, because the really hardcore fans, they'll stick through it, and they have been sticking through it for the past few years and still complaining about it constantly, but still buying the game every single year. I wonder when it will eventually reach that tipping point where those players are really fed up with it and finally take off.
Well, maybe now they'll finally take off, since Black Ops 6 performance was and still is horrendous, and every year the same thing. You know, and guess what? People don't exactly love these systems that control the experience, and it shows. So why do they keep playing, you may ask? And it's simple, because they've been artificially addicted. No profiler's dream come true. And speaking long term, it's a mess, and it's starting to show. History repeats itself, but this time people are done. You know, no amount of rigged matchmaking and gameplay is going to fix that.
I agree with that, but I do also want to state that I feel it's extremely important to keep the more dedicated, loyal fans, which tend to be us, the guys online talking about things and that care about these issues and that are even aware of these issues to begin with.
We've got numerous content creators out there, all pointing out the same issues with Black Ops 6 and games from the past. So why do some channels get more views and traction while others don't? Well, it is because the bigger channels shy away from addressing the current problems in the game, I would argue. You know, maybe it's easier to keep the narrative cozy than actually dive into the mess. And let's not forget the dedicated creators, you know, the ones who do ask the right questions and tackle the tough topics. It really makes you wonder why the bigger content creators don't seem to care about the issues that the smaller ones are calling out. And I just ask myself, is it that hard to face the truth, or is it more profitable to just play along?
I'm worried long term for the franchise because of this, because I feel like they are pushing a lot of us away. And again, like, we'll have to wait and see how things play out over the next couple of years, especially. But I think they're more focused on short term. I don't think they're really looking at these algorithms and thinking super long term.
Short term, no, I wouldn't say so, because the engagement optimized matchmaking patent, for example, expires in 2035, and that's another decade of this mess. I'm just saying.
I think they're thinking short term because that's what corporations tend to do. It's quarterly earnings. That's what matters. They want to focus on everything quarterly. My connection experience is significantly different. Anytime I've done any testing with my bot account, which I just use in custom matches to shoot at basically for videos, when I do skill-based matchmaking testing with that account, and on that account, on average, I get about a 50 ping. And then on my main account, I can often get that 50 ping, like when I play Cold War, for instance. But there are far more instances where I will be bumped up to 100 ping. It literally doubles my ping. And if you watch me stream, for instance, you'll often see me playing on about 100 ping.
And this brings me to the question related to one of my first videos on the channel. Why, as a German player, am I connected to the Frankfurt server with 12 milliseconds only to suddenly see like 50 to 120 milliseconds latency from random US servers? You know, network analysis tools show the IP addresses of the server being in Frankfurt, but once I'm in a match, like once I joined, like different connections pop up, and these aren't just a few isolated cases. You know, when I check the IPs, they're from the east and west coast of the US. So why would I be connected to those servers? You know, and tons of players are reporting the same issue, and other content creators are complaining about it too.
Whereas the moment I switch over to my bot account, 50 ping, lobby after lobby, nearly every single game. And I don't know how to justify that as anything but the matchmaking system having an effect on connection, because I'm playing on the same network, same time of day.
So why is this happening? Well, this passage in the EOMM patent explains how the scoring engine adjusts the importance of various factors when determining the best server for a match based on systems requirements rather than just user preferences or game design. And you can pause it if you want, but I'll just explain it again. So one of the key features are latency adjustments. If a server with minimal latency, so with a faster response time, is under heavy load, the engine might adjust its importance in the matchmaking process, and the engine would lower the weight of latency in the match scoring, meaning it might prioritize other servers with higher latency to balance the load and prevent overloading the fast server. And then we got network costs. If a server is associated with higher network costs, the engine may adjust the matchmaking factors to avoid selecting that server, and it will lower the importance of variables related to the server to avoid matches that would be hosted on that costly server. So the scoring engine is basically capable of altering matchmaking decisions based on technical factors like server load, latency, or network cost to optimize system performance, even if it means less ideal outcomes for the players. And this ensures smooth operation by maintaining balance across servers and reducing strain on critical resources.
Whereas on my bot account, I'm constantly on Western servers. So I'll connect to, I think, like the Bay Area servers, wherever they are there.
And I just want to ask, how come your bot account always seems to get a better connection? And that's an interesting coincidence, if you ask me, because there are people who've even said that when using their bot accounts, the matches are free from rigging and connection issues. You know, it's almost like the bot account is giving them the better experience. And then there's the fact that they patch 2-boxing. You know, that raises some serious questions, because why are different skills accounts getting such a different gameplay experience? Why is it like a player-by-player basis, like the patent state in game? So why does it seem like certain accounts are treated differently, and why is there such a divide in gameplay?
What I always try to focus on is looking for solutions and maybe some potential compromises to make the more dedicated, loyal fans that feel like they're being alienated at least not feel like they're being so alienated. Like I've got a list here of a few things that I feel would significantly improve that. First thing, bring bootcamp playlist back. I think that's a great way to introduce people into the game. In that playlist, mix bots in, so it allows them to get a feel for things a little bit better. Take out any form of high streaks or nukes, so you don't have reverse boosters coming in and just trying to drop nukes on noobs in combat training. Then have your standard matchmaking, but with a protected bracket still, because there's always going to be the people that maybe they have a disability, or maybe they're just never going to reach the level where they can compete with even the average Call of Duty player. And that's the sort of matchmaking that there was plenty of evidence for in previous Call of Duty games. Before Modern Warfare 2019, there was obviously protected bracket because you could reverse boost very effectively and drop nukes and stuff in those lobbies.
Mm-hmm.
So I think protected bracket, and then outside of that protected bracket, have it fairly open, like some loose skill-based matchmaking. So the best of the best are unlikely to play against the worst of the worst, but every now and then there is going to be some overlap on that. That's just going to happen when it comes to something like that.
And I totally agree with changes for matchmaking, and I'm on the same page and gotta give credit where it's due. But this kind of loose matchmaking, where it was more about the game and less about balancing numbers, is never going to be there like it was back in the day. And I'm not sure if I get that right. So I need to be alienated to make others feel better, because I've played the OG Call of Duty titles and play games since over 20 years on mouse and keyboard. And yeah, there are protective brackets, sure, so people at a disadvantage can play in their own brackets, and that's totally fine. But why are skilled players like me and many others pushed out then? Just because we don't have a disadvantage against anyone? Like, how is that fair? Like, maybe money, since we're not spending enough, or advertising the right bundles or products. I don't know.
You know, you beat this team one game, they beat you the next game, and then you go back and forth, shit talking. Like that kind of not having that kind of experience does bum me out, and I do miss that. So I'm with you on that. I don't know why they do that. I mean, I'm sure it's because
I know exactly why they do that.
Okay, do tell.
It's all to do with their engagement optimized matchmaking system. They have to rebalance the lobbies every time, because lesser skilled players, they tend to just stick with the game over and over again. A lot of them, I noticed, they'll get stomped game after game after game, and you wonder, like, why aren't you just leaving the lobby and trying to find an easier one?
Mm-hmm.
But they don't care. They just stick with it, and they'll keep going 2 and 30 the whole time.
And that's exactly how it was back in the day. You know, people didn't care. They would stick around no matter how bad they were playing. So why change the matchmaking in the first place? You know, the OGs know this. We'd keep playing, hoping to get on the same team as the skilled players, not complaining about anything. And if we were the skilled players, it's the same deal. You know, we'd stick around, carry the team, and enjoy the challenge. And nobody ever complained about the old matchmaking when ping was king. But we'll get back to that shortly.
So with this system, when that happens to them, the game is sort of giving them a helping hand and automatically forcing them into a different lobby that will give them a better experience to keep them around for longer. You have control over your connection experience, and you know that it's not going to be sacrificed in order to get a better skill match for you, because to me, that's not acceptable for like a AAA shooter like this. where ping is so important. I think you
Mhm.
should have some form of control over that for yourself.
I agree with that, 100%. Remember when ping was king, right? It's like a distant memory now, and I wonder why there are multiple videos, including mine and people reporting that they're connecting to servers all over the world, and playing Black Ops 6, and I get connected to East and West Coast servers as a German, while still having apparently 12 milliseconds, and it makes you wonder, doesn't it? I mean, we talked about the section already that tampers with your connection.
It taking longer to get content for videos. I think I mentioned this earlier. It's easier to exploit than ever, I feel, with the matchmaking and pub stompers. A lot of them, at least, they're joining on bot accounts, or another thing you can do is you just consistently join on the person that performed the worst in every previous match. And if you continue to do that, after 2 or 3 matches, you're going to be down on those bot lobbies without having to have a second account. But for many of the big content creators, it's no problem to have a second PS4, second monitor, second account. Session join on that, and it's easier than ever to grab really easy gameplays for them for that. But as far as people using it as a scapegoat, I totally agree. I think people overstate the strength of skill-based matchmaking constantly and don't realize that they may actually be benefiting from it.
So essentially here's explained how two-boxing works and how people have been using it for years. But the real question is, how would anyone truly benefit from skill-based or even engagement-optimized matchmaking, whatever you want to call it, right? Because it's clear players aren't benefiting. Losing around 65% of the player base is insane. And this cycle keeps repeating itself. Some content creators, not all, apparently used the two-boxing method. And now many of these creators are making less content or have stopped playing entirely. And I just asked myself, could this be tied to them no longer being able to access bot lobbies? Because it's worth noting that some creators still show bot-like gameplay in the videos. And to be clear, I'm not accusing Ace or anyone else out there of using two-boxing or having done so in the past. I'm just simply pointing out that many content creators have admitted to it, and as I mentioned, their reduced content output or noticeable changes in gameplay style can be proven by looking at their upload frequency or the kind of gameplay they showcase.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't watch a lot of other YouTubers. I try to avoid it actively for the most part. So I stay original with as much content as possible. But I'm aware of a bunch that came out and specifically said they were joining bot accounts and reverse boosting.
And this is exactly why so many people turned to two-boxing, because they knew the system was rigged and they wanted to bypass the algorithm's manipulation. And there's a reason this method was so popular, right? Why fix two-boxing? Because it wasn't just content creators and streamers using this method. Average players caught on, especially during Black Ops 6, where it became a widespread phenomenon. And two-boxing has been around for ages. It's no secret. Every single Call of Duty had players abusing it. I mean, think about those players dropping insane scores like 120 to 5 on Nuketown with a couple of nukes in the mix, right? And that was achievable back in the Modern Warfare 2 2009 days when matchmaking wasn't rigged and ping was king. Or even on PC, we would pick a dedicated server in Call of Duty 4, World at War, and it had classic matchmaking. Those were the glory days. People even said they could access protected brackets through two-boxing, and some disabled content creators mentioned others invading their safe zones using this method, and it was a chaos. Now, objectively speaking, I can't help but ask, why does gameplay from certain content creators look so drastically different from everyone else's? And for me, the game is literally unplayable. Like, watch my videos, they look completely different. And before anyone blames my setup, I have 160 frames per second logged and constant on 1440p max settings. I have a gigabit connection with buffer bloat rating A+, and Ethernet connection in a single person household. And after the two-boxing patch, people obviously left and the lobbies became even more unbearable. Yet when I watch specific content creators, their lobbies look like the biggest bot fest imaginable, and enemies don't shoot back, and these creators don't get deleted in, I don't know, a millisecond like the rest of us, and it's like they're playing an entirely different game.
I'm talking about the ones that are really outspoken about it. They tend to be the ones that are reverse boosting, I feel, because they got so angry with the system that they're doing that, and then they are the ones that are pushing their audience to be so against skill-based matchmaking.
And I wonder why that is. Let's not forget, it's not skill-based, it's engagement-optimized matchmaking, and of course, people are furious about the system. But here's the thing, there's one glaring similarity between content creators and one thing most of them have in common. It's their gameplay. It all looks the same. There's no rigging, no lag, just buttery smooth connections. And it's nice to watch, but it's night and day compared to what the average player experiences. And it could be because some of these content creators need to advertise a better experience in gameplay to get people to buy, the game, get the game on Game Pass, or just play the free-to-play weekend or product, for example. Now, what's also really interesting, some content creators, likely those without ties to Activision, actually call out the issues. Meanwhile, others stay suspiciously quiet and they'll mention Call of Duty has issues in passing, but they'll never touch the big stuff, the rigged systems we've been dealing with since 2019. So one side speaks up and the other side tiptoes around it. And if you're dared to question the system or point out the obvious, you're labeled a rage baiter or conspiracy theorist. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? It's almost like certain topics are off limits for some people. And now, guys, I want to wrap things up. So XclusiveAce participated in a debate with Hutch about Call of Duty's matchmaking systems, and they discussed the difference between skill-based and engagement-optimized matchmaking. And looking at now, in 2025, the points made during the debate are even more relevant as the issues have only gotten worse over the years. And I want to make it clear that my analysis isn't meant to attack anyone. My goal is to highlight the problems within the matchmaking system that many of us has experienced. And since 2019, Activision has filed patents related to matchmaking systems, and these aren't just theoretical ideas. They're actively in use, and while many players blame skill-based matchmaking for ruining their experience, the real problem is engagement-optimized matchmaking. Yes, skill plays a small role, I know that, but it's almost irrelevant compared to how the system prioritizes engagement and ultimately profit. And I also have my own observations, right? And I ran tests that showed no correlation between skill and matchmaking outcomes, and factors like player level or prestige, which used to matter, are now just meaningless. Back in the day when you saw someone with a high level of prestige, you respected them because you knew they were good, but that's no longer the case. The system doesn't reward skill, it manipulates matchups to keep you playing or spending money. And we also have the hidden data and lack of transparency. This is also something I mentioned in my recent videos, because Activision collects a lot of data about us players, but most of it remains hidden. And public APIs, which used to allow us to analyze this data, have been removed. I ask myself why? Because the information they contain would probably reveal how the system really works. And the lack of transparency is frustrating and only adds to the sense that these systems are designed to manipulate us. And then we have unfair lobbies, monetization, because the lobbies are just horrendous, right? Like I said multiple times, even in my old videos, it doesn't make any sense. It's not fun. If I watch other content creators or streamers, not everyone out there, but most of them have just a nice time, so to say. It's like back in the days, people not shooting back, connection is fine, and the monetization issue. It's just that these games, especially Black Ops 6, a lot of people talked about it, but they just push microtransactions. That's all they do. They don't fix stuff. They don't really bring updates. They break stuff. And it just doesn't make any sense. And I'm just sick and tired of monetization, to be honest. We also have the cheating and anti-cheat issues, right? We can't ignore that. Even if I would argue it's not fully cheater infested, as most people argue, like most people say it's skill-based matchmaking. No, it's engagement optimized matchmaking, and it's not all cheaters. Most of them are bots because they learned from the flawed data set. I mentioned that multiple times in my recent videos. And like we talked about, these algorithms they use are hidden server-side. So even if someone reverse engineered the game, they wouldn't find much. But still, these bots and cheating, still a common thing. And last but not least, I want to talk about the community. And this is kind of sad because the community has never been more divided, it feels like. And I get it, some people still enjoy the game, while others like me and many others find it completely unplayable. And the numbers show that. People say, oh, Steam charts, they don't show the full picture. Obviously, it does not, but losing 65% of your players on one platform in over 2 months is kind of bad. And gameplay speaks louder than stats here. You know, and I've seen players with mediocre stats getting bot lobbies, while others with similar or better stats, including myself, are thrown into ridiculous matches. And it's clear that something else is influencing the matchmaking, which we talked about in this whole video. And you may ask, why does this matter? Well, I see the debate between XclusiveAce and Hutch as a great starting point for understanding the matchmaking systems in Call of Duty. And by looking at patterns and analyzing data, it's obvious that these systems prioritize engagement and monetization over fair gameplay. And this isn't some wild conspiracy theory. It's based on real patterns, facts, and evidence. And ultimately, my goal with this is to raise awareness. The issues with Call of Duty's matchmaking aren't just about skill, like I said, and they're about systems designed to manipulate us. And I encourage you to think critically about what's really happening and to approach these discussions constructively. And don't use this as a reason to attack anyone. Please, let's focus on finding solutions and understanding the systems that are shaping our experience. And that's it for today, guys. Sorry that I haven't posted in the last couple days, but I was working on this beauty for a while, and it took me a long time. I think I've said it multiple times now. It is not to attack anyone. It is not an attack to XclusiveAce. I don't want to go against streamers or content creators out there. It is just that this debate was, or is still, a great starting point to understand most of the stuff that we experience in Call of Duty. And this debate, like I said, was over 3 years ago. So we still have the same problems. And I think we as a community should work together and, like I always say, demand better, because we deserve better. And this is not it. We should not play games that are rigged by algorithms just to keep us engaged and spending money. And as always, guys, if you're still watching, if you have enjoyed the video, please leave a like. Always leave your thoughts in the comments below. And you can subscribe to the channel if you're interested in more stuff like this. But like I said, that's it for me for today, guys. I wish you a great weekend, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.